Hello, everybody. This is Ashley Cobb. Welcome to another episode of Sex with Ashley. And here today we are talking about good sex. So, like, everybody wants good sex, right? Everybody wants to have good sex. Everybody likes to think they're having good sex. Everybody, if you're not having good sex, you want to learn how to have good sex. So today we are talking about talk good sex. And so our guest for today, Dr. Candice Hargons, she wrote a book called Good Sex. Look at that. So we're gonna talk about this book, right? And we're gonna talk about what is your definition of good sex. Because I bet you, like, if I surveyed all the people on my Instagram and I asked the people what is good sex, I'm gonna get 90,000 different answers.
You are.
Yeah, because everybody has their own definition of what makes sex good for them. So let's start out. So how did you come up with the good sex, and how did you break? Because you have, what is it? It's like 19 like different
hmm
little ingredients. And so how do you get those 19 ingredients? And then let's talk about that.
Okay, first of all, you should go on and ask your community. There are three words for good sex and see if they map on because that's exactly what I did. So I surveyed over 400 people and I asked them if you could describe good sex in three words, what would they be? And then me and my research team took that list of thousands of words, like you said, and we condensed it down based on similarities to 19.
Okay.
So there's a lot of areas of overlap for a lot of people. Passion was the number one. Like people were like, I want passionate sex, but you see other things like intimacy and love and nastiness and fun, all of those. But my definition, because I want to make room for everybody to define it for themselves,
Mhm.
is sex that is good to and good for everybody involved. So
Okay.
I'm not trying to narrow it to one, two, or three people, however many people might be involved. I'm not trying to narrow it to specific sex acts. Even if the acts don't seem sexual to someone else, I am letting people self define, and consensual is the floor, right? Everything else after that is what it's good to and good for everybody involved.
Okay, so before we get into these 19 different ingredients, let's talk about you for a second. So how long have you been doing your, because you are a sex researcher, right? What is your proper title? So I can get it right.
Yep. So I'm an associate professor. I study sex research, and I'm also a licensed psychologist.
Okay, so it's therapist.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So how long have you been doing that? What made you get into it? And like, let's talk about your background, because I know everybody.
Okay.
What makes her qualified? I don't know if you get that, but I get that sometimes. Like, what makes you qualified to talk about sex? Like, so let's get that out the way first. Let's get.
Okay, cool. So I have been seeing clients talking about sex therapeutically since 2009.
Okay.
So however many years that is, 16 years at this point, and I've been doing research for the same amount of time.
Okay.
And I started in my master's program right around the corner at Georgia State University studying sex, and then kept building out my research program when I went to the University of Kentucky as a faculty member. And now I'm right here at Emory's Rollins School of Public Health, still studying sex and liberation. And I love it. I enjoy the work, but I would say even before I became a scholar of sex, even before I became a sex therapist and a psychologist, I was just a curious little precocious black girl, a fast ass black girl, and looking to find out when my body was going to develop. Like, when am I going to get titties? Like, what is going to happen? What is sex like? Everybody seems to be having fun, and they're just telling me to keep my legs closed and not do it. And so I was curious and looking for answers in all the places that family wasn't telling me I should go.
Okay. So I can understand that. I was, when I was growing up, I grew up I wasn't as curious about sex, like, cause it's interesting, cause a lot of people in this profession, whether you're a sex therapist, educator, researcher, we all come from different backgrounds.
Yes.
But what I've noticed, a lot of people who do this work, they'll say, I was the person growing up that my friends always talked about sex. That was not me.
That was not
No, ma'am.
what?
It was not me. That was not me, baby. No, no, no. We didn't have. I tell people I grew up saved, right? So
Yes.
we grew up saved.
Sanctified.
So we didn't have. I didn't have sex conversations in my house. So I wasn't having sex conversations out in the street. And it really was not until I went to college when I first started having sex. And it was like, I remember, this is a true story. I was a freshman in college, and me and my roommate and my other friends, we were talking. I don't know how we even got on the topic of giving head. Don't know how we
Right.
ever got there. And I was like, I'm never gonna do that, because people who give head are like, I had this thing like, people who give head were like these nasty whores, a thing, right?
Oh,
This what I'm like, I'm never gonna do that. Like, I respect myself. I'm a lady,
oh,
right? And and lo and behold, like the next semester, it wasn't even the next semester, okay, it was penis in mouth, right?
yeah.
So like, so I was not one of those people who grew up talking about sex.
Did you feel did you feel like you had to release a lot of shame that had been like kind of circling around you based on that, like doing the shift?
Yes. So
Okay.
I had to learn I had to understand that I could be a sexual being and still be loved by God.
Yes.
I
Yes.
understand that. I had to understand that, God designed sex and he wanted us to have it. Now, granted, I do think sometimes, I'll say for me, it was not God's design for it to be as recreational as I did.
Okay.
I will say that. He didn't want me to pop pussy on every nigga. Just find one nigga, right? you know.
Was it just one no? Because in the Bible, a lot of stuff was being done. I don't know.
But I had to relearn and unlearn some of the toxic things that the church taught me, and had to just kind of like figure it out on my own. So I will say, in my figuring it out on my own, that's kind of when the whole this is not this I don't know how this is not even the sexual action interview, but we here now. So
Look, I'm curious. I'm here like,
in the figuring out of my own and figuring out kind of like what it is I wanted, and because that's how the Sex with Ashley thing came. I was like, okay, let me try, let me figure out, explore what it is I want sexually. I was
yeah.
like late 20s when that happened, 28, 29, 30, somewhere around there. And then that's kind of how that came about. It came out of me trying to figure out what it is I wanted as a sexual adult. Um,
Okay. So we were doing it's the same process just 20 years later.
yeah,
'Cause I was like 8, 9, 10,
yeah.
trying to be like, I
Whole
wasn't
adult,
even having sex. I just wanted to know,
yeah.
like, what is it going to be when it happens for me?
Yeah.
So,
I remember, like, so the first guy I had sex with, great guy, if he's watching it, great guy. He was older than me, but I remember, and so like again, went to college. I met him while I was at college. He was like 3, 4 years older than I was, and so I remember thinking, and he was the only guy that I was having sex with for like 2 years. So
mm-hmm.
and I remember thinking, like, everybody talks about how great their sex life was and all the different things, and I was like, I don't know. Like, I was like, I don't know if, like, it wasn't bad, right? But it also wasn't the thing I was reading about. But that's also
Yeah,
when Zane was like very popular. Remember the Zane books?
I sure do.
So me and some of my friends would read Zane's book in our college dorm rooms. So like Zane was popular, and I was like, I just wasn't. It just wasn't this.
Mm-mm.
Like I don't know what's missing, but I know it wasn't. It was not in the stories that I was reading, and it wasn't until I stopped. He and I broke up, and then I kind of started with some other people. And I was like, oh, okay, like, oh, okay.
So, what was the difference maker? Because that might lead to what good sex is to you. What shifted where you were like, oh,
Um, so I'll say this. I didn't have my first orgasm until I was like 28. So, but after he and I had started, I know, after he and I, sad state of affairs. But after he and I stopped what we were doing in college, I had sex with like 2 or 3 other people from that time until I graduated. And it was just the different experience with the different guys. Like, okay, I like this, I didn't really like that.
Ah,
This
okay.
had different. One guy was a very well endowed, like very well endowed. That was a new experience. One guy was, just kind of regular. One guy was really good at performing oral sex. That was a new experience. So it was kind of like this new experience of things I was experiencing that I really hadn't
Yes.
experienced before with the original guy. Like he was okay, but it wasn't like oh okay.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Maybe was he new at it too? Because sometimes that can be a thing.
no,
No.
he was
Okay.
25 and he been with us for a while. But also, but this is too. Why I tell people this too is like guys, particularly, I know at that time I was 18, he was 25. It seemed like he had all this experience, right? It's like, oh
Yeah.
my God, he's 25. But now as somebody who's 40, I realize 25 is not, you don't have that much
Still
experience.
tender. You can
Yeah.
still be tender.
You don't know
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing either, right? You're just trying to figure it out because I'm 25 and yes, and just because I've been having sex since I was like 17 or 16 or however long it was, like typically in those guys that young are not, they have not matured enough to understand women's pleasure or trying to please a woman. For them, it's kind of like, oh, okay, I'm going to stick it in, boom, 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 boom,
Mm.
out. Like they haven't matured yet. From my, guys typically, and this is my experience, don't really understand that your pleasure matters too. To they get almost 30. Um,
Really?
in the
See,
20s,
listen,
they just be out here. They just
I
fucking.
don't feel I had a different experience because one thing I love is an enthusiastic eater, right? And I would say that in my experience in the AUC,
Okay.
people was enthusiastic.
Okay, so
We had a time in the early 2000s.
maybe it was just my early 2000 experience was just not. It was just not a. It was, and again, it wasn't a bad experience. So like I had guys who did oral sex, but to me, I just feel like that it wasn't until I got in my 30s
Mm.
that like men actually like, oh, okay, how that feel? Oh, okay, what you want me to do
Oh,
next?
they were concerned. Okay.
That's what it is. Maybe concerned, and they actually like. I know guys who, in my 30s, who wouldn't finish until I finished. Like that was
Yes,
my 20s. Like they was like, all right,
that
I'm.
was definitely a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they was like, okay, I'm done. Like you're not done. Like that's kind of how it was when it was for me in my 20s. Like in my 30s, guys seem like actually they they learned something and they
Yeah.
started to care. And I think that probably makes the sex better because I tell people all the
Yes.
time, I don't have bad sex now. Like
Hmm.
all of my sex at this stage of my life is good. Now
Yeah.
it's not great, but all of it is good,
That's right.
right? Because I understand what I need for every sexual encounter. Like I have like the basic
Mm.
things I need. We need to do one, two, and three, or whatever they are. And we can do other things too,
That's right. But these gotta happen.
but these have to happen for it to be a good time. And so that's how I have good sex. I know what my
So it sounds like you're communicative. You know what you want. You figured out what you want, and also you tell the people that you're having sex with, this is what it should be. This is what is going to facilitate my pleasure, and you can have a good time along the way because I'm a good time.
yes. And then you also I think in order to have good sex too, you also have to be receptive to feedback.
Yeah. Yeah.
That goes on both ends.
It's both ways. Yes.
Ways you have to be so to that point, right? So I had I to my business sometimes. So I had a guy one time tell me that that on a scale of 1 to 10, he thought my head was like a 4.
And that's the point taken. It's like, okay.
Okay. And I didn't really like I didn't get upset or anything. I was like, okay, cool. And I was like, okay, so I was like, so what makes it a 4? What have you had in the past that you thought was like a 5 or above or a 10?
Yeah.
You talked about it, right? Cool. And so he explained it, right? And then we had a it's funny. We had a in person, teaching moment.
Ooh, I like a little teaching moment.
Yeah, he was like, do this or do that. Like it was, you know what I'm saying? And so like you have to be receptive. It has to be on both ends. And I feel comfortable telling people, oh, I need you to do this, or I didn't really like that. You also have to be receptive because you can't be in your feelings. Because if you're gonna be
Mm,
in your feelings, and you ain't nobody gonna have good sex. You gotta be willing to listen and be receptive.
yes, I love that. And I would say I love head, like giving and receiving. And so to your point about like getting feedback that it wasn't hitting the way I thought it was gonna hit, I'm like, challenge. Let's figure it out.
It's weird when people say like I tell people I can never if I married somebody today and they were like I don't need head ever again, I would be fine with that. Like I wouldn't lose sleep over like cool, right? Right? I think because and this is probably something I probably should probably talk about with somebody's therapist or something. But I think because like so I have very full lips, in case you haven't noticed, right? And so these lips have been the like what is like a point of interest with
Mm,
my whole
mm-hmm,
life, right?
mm-hmm.
And, oh, I just your lips, like oh my god, right? And it's just to the point where like I now granted I love my lips. I think they're one of the best things on my face.
Yeah,
I love them. However, sometimes I'm like, okay, like I know you like my lips. You want me to suck your dick?
it feels like a fetish.
Yes, it's
Yes.
like fetish. Like I know, we just like men like, oh, I love your lips. I know you want your dick sucked, don't you? Right? It just what you know. And so
Mm-hmm.
like so giving head is not really um something that is like I do it because the guys that I like, the guys I with like it. And I do it also, it's also the power thing, or guys enjoying it and all that stuff. So those are the reasons why I do it. But those reasons don't outweigh that. Like if I didn't ever have to do it again, I would.
Ah, okay. And I've
Yeah,
had partners where they were like, I'm not too concerned about head. That's not really my thing. And so I feel like I feel like I'm missing out on something that I enjoy, but I'm not gonna do it on somebody that don't want it, right? Whereas if a partner is like, I love this, I'm excited because I enjoy it as well.
yeah. So I'm one of them girls, and people, and sometimes men are surprised when I say that, and I'm like, yeah,
Because they think people who are sex educators do everything for everybody. And it's like, no,
And
you're
they think
wrong.
I have these big lists that I'm just like, no, I do it, but it's like, and I know how to do. I used to teach blowjob classes years ago. So I know the parts, I know the movements and stuff. It's just like, on a scale of 1 to 10, uh, if it's my favorite thing to do, no, it's not. I
Mm-mm.
something that I feel like I do because my partner likes it, and that's
Right,
also
right.
that's what people have to do in order to make good sex. Sometimes you might have to do something that you're not particularly fond of, but your partner likes it, so I do it.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's talk about these ingredients.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So the first one you have here is sex is intimate. So why is that? So I'm gonna go over all the ingredients. You tell me like why
Hmm.
was that an ingredient and like some key points of each ingredient.
Okay.
Okay, so good sex and intimate. Let's talk about that.
So I love this chapter because I start the book here. A lot of people put intimacy at the top of their list. It wasn't as high as passion, but a lot of people said that. But I also find that in the culture that I'm a part of, the cultures I'm a part of, people really have a hard time with intimacy. And I really wanted to lead with that. We get these like ideas about catching feelings as if it's a communicable disease and you should avoid it at all costs, as
Catch
opposed to
light,
being
not feelings. And then what the shirt say?
right.
Catch light, not feelings. Okay.
And I'm like, I'm trying to catch both. Like, I want flights and feelings. But that vulnerability, I think, is something that a lot of people have been so hurt that they're like, I'm not about to risk it again. And then some people mistake intimacy for sex as opposed to one of the possibilities for intimacy. So I use Dr. Shamira Howard's work in that chapter, and I talk about the 7 types of intimacy that she breaks down. which is like sexual intimacy is one, but then you got physical, emotional, social, financial, spiritual. And all of those are ways of being close to somebody or getting to know somebody that make the sex good. So being known is enjoyable for most people.
So you said financial intimacy, right? And so
Hmm.
I think that is a big one
Oof.
because like being finding someone who you can be completely open and honest with and transparent
Mm.
about what you make, what you don't make, what your bank account look like. Like, baby, my
Yes.
credit score is a two, right? I have $3 in my savings account,
It's
whatever.
vulnerable.
Right, it is like and I had one guy that I was seeing one time, and we had a financial conversation because he was so I'm not the best with money. Like, I'm gonna keep be honest. You know, I just spend and buy stuff. Right, cool. Um, and so he was very good with money. Like, the running joke between me and my best friend is she was like, I any guy with you gonna have to be good with money because you're not, right?
Gotcha.
Whatever. And so he was really good with money, right? He was really good at saving money and all these things. And so he asked me one day, he was like, "So, what is your like money situation like?" And I was like, and I told him, I was honest.
Yeah.
I could have let some things out or lied or something, but I didn't. I was very honest. And I haven't and that was the first time I was honest with any guy
Oh.
about my what well one, no one never asked. So there's that too.
Okay.
So he was the first. So he was the first one who actually asked,
Mm.
and then because I was comfortable with him, I answered. But most people, most men that I've dealt with, have never asked. So I don't know what that
Mm.
means. That could mean a couple
They
things.
kind of tap dance around it, or they don't even mention it at all.
They never mention it at all.
Oh.
Long as I'm not like, they never mention it at all. They never ask
Hmm.
me because I can pay for my lifestyle.
That's right.
That
Hmm.
is I don't ask. I'm not asking men for money. Maybe I should start doing that, but I'm not right. And so they like, well, like, you shouldn't ask me for money, or like, or so they don't never ask. They never ask like, do you have how much do you have money in stocks or savings, or like they just don't
Hmm.
ask. So I've never so that's my first time being asked that question. But it kind of turned me on a little bit because I'm like, God,
Okay. How
right?
did he receive the answer?
Oh, he was receptive because he was like, okay, cool.
Good.
He was like, okay, so I can help you figure out some things and get better with these things here, here, and here. So I like that, and so like moving forward, right? We don't talk no more for other reasons, but moving forward, moving forward, I think I want to be with somebody who is, um, I can have that financial intimacy with, but
Yeah.
also people might not have asked too because they might not want me in their business because
That's
I'm
right.
you asking me, I'm gonna ask you. So I asked him too.
That's
That's how I know it's something together. But like, they don't ask because they probably robbing Peter to pay Paul too, so they not asking.
so because of their own like shame around their financial situation, they wouldn't even invite the conversation. Meanwhile, could have been combining stuff and laughing and like, yep, we both in the boat.
Yeah, could be. But that was a good one. Okay, so sex is fun.
Yes. And this one, I feel like most people would get it that they want sex to be something that is where they can have a good time, like laugh with each other, kiki, but it's like still intimate, connected, all of the other pieces. But what I find is when I'm working with couples, especially couples who have been together for a long time, the fun has seeped out and it becomes very routine. And especially if they're dealing with things like fertility issues, people who are dealing with reproductive health concerns, people who are dealing with impotence or, erectile dysfunction, the fun seeps out of it. And I love this chapter because it lets people know there are different ways to have fun. And it's a really beautiful ingredient when you can have that type of levity in your sexual situation.
So sex is pleasurable. I think that kind of like defines itself.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
because if it's not get some type of pleasure out of it, then why the hell are we doing it?
Right.
And pleasurable doesn't like pleasurable for me, and you tell me if you agree with this or not. doesn't always have to be in an orgasm. Like I can
That's
enjoy,
right.
yeah, I can enjoy the sex and it can be pleasurable without an orgasm. I think sometimes people
Yes.
equate the two as the same. They're not always.
And that's why I have the chapters separate because it's like an orgasm can be very pleasurable, but there's so many other types of pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you don't want to come because you just want to sit in that pleasure, just marinate in it for a while and let that be that. And I love considering all the ways that you can have pleasure that don't have to end in an orgasm.
So, question: what's the difference between the chapter with sex is pleasurable and then sex is satisfying? What's the difference between those?
I like breaking the satisfying down because it's like, did you get what you came for?
Okay.
Some people don't get into sex for pleasure. There's over 200 reasons, according to Cindy Meston's research, why people have sex. Some people are having sex for revenge. Some people are having sex because they need to get a bill paid.
I know.
Some people are having sex because they want to please their partner, but they're not necessarily concerned about themselves. Some people are having sex because they want to feel desirable, even if the sex isn't necessarily like helpful for them in other ways. And so sexual satisfaction is, did I get what I came to get? Were my expectations for what I wanted met?
Okay.
And I think if you want sex to be pleasurable, then that can be a part of satisfying, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay. Good. Good. And then sex is good. Sex is orgasmic. Um. So again, break down difference between orgasmic and then pleasurable.
Hmm. So you can have orgasmic sex where you and your partner get to it 3 minutes later, you bust a nut, and then it was cool. Maybe there was a little momentary bit of pleasure, but it wasn't a pleasurable experience. Maybe you weren't aroused enough or lubricated enough, or maybe you weren't like really deeply desiring it. It was just like, this is kind of like to scratch an itch.
Mm-hmm.
But pleasurable, kind of, for some people, it's a full body experience. And it can, be a slow burn for some people. It can be a quicker cook for other people. But pleasure is more embodied than orgasm. Orgasm happens mostly in the genitals. Other places you can orgasm for sure, but I think it's different from pleasure in that it doesn't have to have a specific endpoint or outcome.
So good sex is connected, and I see that talks about like kind of like a mindfulness
Hmm.
type of
Hmm.
thing. And so, why is mindfulness important to sex, to good sex?
Okay, let me ask folks to think about how often you spend doing things where you feel like you're on autopilot, where you have checked out of the room, your body, yourself. You might be scrolling, saying, I'm just going to do 10 minutes, and then 3 hours later, you still scrolling. You might binge watch a show, and then, it's 2 a.m., and you thought you were about to go to bed at midnight. Like a lot of us spend, self included, a lot of time disembodied or disconnected. And so to be mindful means that you're just turning your attention back to the present moment. You're just being thoughtful about what it feels like right now, not in the future, not in the past, not in a fantasy, but right now. What's the temperature like? What's the pressure like? What's your breathing like? Where are you? What are you feeling? Who are you with? What does it taste like? What does it smell like? All of those things have to do with mindfulness. And I think most of the research points to how mindfulness helps you have a more delicious sexual experience because you are experiencing all that sex can be as opposed to like you're disembodied and kind of just watching yourself have sex from above.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this you said this one is one you said people talk about, and that's about passionate.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So
question. So,
yeah.
what's the difference between because you have one? So, what's the difference between intimacy and passionate? Are they like brothers, right?
Not
Cousins?
really.
Okay.
Honestly, passion, I mean, they're homies,
Okay.
possibly. But I think a lot of people experience passion with people they have less intimacy with. They have to work harder to have passion
Mm.
with people they are very familiar with. Because some, like intimacy is like a bell curve where if you don't have any connection, it can be hard to feel passionate because you're not necessarily safe. But if you have too much connection, it's like I know way too much about you. It makes it harder to like you remember that person throwing up. You know what I'm saying? Like, it makes it harder to feel passionate. It's not impossible, but it can make it harder for a lot of people.
So let me say this. So I used to.
Hmm.
So I have a friend that was a friend, and then we had sex. So it was a friend first, and then we had sex. And I remember we was having sex one time, and I started laughing in the middle of sex. Because in my mind, I was like, I cannot believe I'm fucking him. Like, girl, what are you doing? That's what I was thinking. Like, I cannot believe we are doing this. Like, this is that's and I like, and he was like, you okay? I was like, what's funny? I was like, I just can't believe that this is happening. And like, and so we just kind of stopped, and we never did it again. And it wasn't like because I didn't like him or whatever. It was just the fact that like, girl, what are you doing? Like, this is your friend. Like, I couldn't
Yes.
get that out of my head. And it just like, and I cannot do it ever again. It's just
So
like,
you see what I'm saying, right? Where it's like I know too much about you. Like
no,
it's too deep.
yeah, no, this ain't it.
And it doesn't have to be like that, right? So for some people, knowing so much about someone can create the foundation for it to be very passionate because it's like we overcame all this stuff to get back to each other. And so it's like, like Janet Jackson talks about a moth to a flame. So I can't keep my hands off of you. But for a lot of people, and especially depending on what your attachment style is, it's like, nah, nah, because we went too far.
Now I do have one that is like, we were friends. We started doing something else, and it just our friendship transitioned over to passion.
Yeah.
But I do have some that one particular. I was like, "Babe, what am I doing? Am I bored?" Like I really was like, "What am I doing? Like this is not it." Um, good sex is reciprocal. I think that speaks for itself. It,
Hmm.
you need you need to be get something out of it. Vice versa, everybody should be get something out of this. If it's
That's
just
right.
you are not somebody's masturbation sleeve. So if
Mm-mm. And say that again.
yeah, if you're not somebody's masturbation sleeve. So if I'm not getting something out of it, then what are we doing? We both should be getting something out of this. It shouldn't be a one way street. Now, unless that's your king, then okay, whatever.
Yeah,
But like, but then you're getting something out of it too. Then still,
that's right.
all right. Good sex is nasty. Now, nasty differs from person to person.
That's right.
So some people think nasty is eating is eating booty. Some people think nasty is that special. Some people only give head on anniversaries.
And that's true.
I think that's kind of sad, but whatever. Some people, so whatever like I had a person one time who loves sucking toes. Getting your
Hmm.
toes sucked by the right person is very stimulating. I had another person who hated toes and feet. He thought it was disgusting. I had somebody who liked to spit in my mouth, like spit in my mouth. Depending on who you ask, they're like, "No, that's nasty," right? So it just kind of depends on
I don't be trying to yuck anybody's yum, but I know what is not on my list and it's been in my mouth. Like I'm not going to be able to receive that. But I have heard a lot of people rock with it, and I'm like,
So
well, if you like it, I love it for you.
I thought that too, right? I was like, I don't know if I like this, right? I was like, but I was like, I'm the type of person, I'm a trisexual.
You
So
gonna try it?
I'll try anything at least 3 times to make sure I know I like it, right? And so I was like, he was like, so the one thing that I think is my talent or gift is I make men feel really comfortable to tell me things they want to do. And
Yes,
because I can just tell me my face doesn't change because there's nothing you have a guy has said that I probably have never heard before. Like it's nothing new.
that's right.
So men feel real comfortable to share all their things with me. And so he was like, I like to spit in people's mouths. I know he was like kind of real shame about it. And I was like,
Uh,
okay, well, all right. And I was like, what you mean? Like he explained. And so I was like, okay, well, one time when we have sex, I'll try it.
yeah,
And if I don't like it, then we won't do no more. But I'll at least try it.
right.
And so
Hmm.
we tried it, and it wasn't as gross as I thought it was gonna be. Like,
Okay.
it wasn't. It wasn't as gross as I was like. It was. It was not as like I didn't like. Ugh. I didn't like dry heat. I thought maybe this is gonna be disgusting. I'm gonna throw up, but it was not. It was not as disgusting as I thought it was. And I was like, you know what? Okay.
On a scale of the same scale that you gave for giving head, where is it?
So I don't have to do it again.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah, I don't have to do it again. But if he and I continue to like be together, I would do it with him because he likes it. Now we wouldn't do it every time, but I was open enough to doing it.
Yeah,
Right. Now if I date somebody like I don't like spit mouth, great. I ain't gonna lose no sleep because you want me spit
that's
mouth.
right.
Yeah. But so it was about the same.
Okay. And I ask people that because I'm like, do you like it? Are you willing to do it even though it's not like it doesn't do anything for you either way? Or do you hate it but you're complying? And it sounds like for you, it's like, I'm willing.
Yeah,
I'm open. Yeah.
I didn't hate it. Now things I hate, I ain't doing again.
Yeah.
I didn't hate it. It was just like, oh, okay, and we could
And
go.
I love that because like nastiness is you want to test your limits. You
Hmm.
want to know where your boundaries are and you got to try things.
Hmm.
So I give the yes, no, maybe so. And it's like, if it's on your maybe list, try it out. See what's up.
You never know. You might say, oh, okay,
Hmm.
cool. So I've tried a lot of things that's on my maybe list. I'm like, you know what? This not as bad as I thought it was gonna be.
Hmm.
Okay, good sex is exciting. That goes with. Didn't we say fun? No.
Hmm.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that kind of goes with fun, right?
Hmm.
Kinda. Okay. Good sex is loving. So talk about this one.
Yes. I want to just bring the point home that you can love somebody you are not in a committed romantic relationship with. You can be loving toward the people you have sex with and not have to feel like I'm gonna commit my whole life to you. Loving is about, I use bell hooks as word, like care and attention, being thoughtful, like you were talking about, being thoughtful, considerate of them.
Hmm.
And I feel like a lot of people mess up the game when we get into what, some people call hookup culture, but just, like your situationships where they're like, since it's a situationship and not a relationship, I gotta treat the person a certain way, like an arm's length, and
Hmm.
act disgusted with them or like, uh. And I'm like, you can be loving toward that person. Now you need to let them know that you don't want to be in a committed relationship. That's okay. But I want sex to be the possibility of loving sex to be on the table for everybody because we're all worthy of love.
I think people do the whole arm's length thing with like situationships, particularly women. I'll say that 'cause I'm a woman. I think we do that because we are trying to guard our feelings, and so
Yeah.
we don't know how to. Sometimes it's hard to. I think everybody, or maybe not everybody, maybe just me. You start off with a person, it's situationship, like this is not only supposed to be sex, and then as you start having, the more times you have sex with somebody, you start sometimes like, oh dang, maybe he is kind of cute, right? You start seeing stuff that was not there before, like ooh, maybe, maybe his breath don't stink that bad, right? And so now, like, because sex is intimate, so it's supposed to be if you're doing it right, and then now you're like pillow talking, and all that stuff. So now, and your endorphins are doing what they do, and so now you like, you kind of like him a little bit. But this is always supposed to be, always supposed to be a situationship. So that's why, like, I feel like people kind of like try to separate the two, because I don't
Yes.
mess around and fall in love. I know there's several people who like they end up marrying a sneaky link. Like I married my sneaky link. We was not supposed to be doing this. We was just here to fuck, and I end up
Mm.
with your last name. Now, how that happen?
Do they love them? Do they want to be married to him, or do they just happen upon some marriage?
Well, no, they love him, but like it wasn't that wasn't the original intent. They were not going into it like to date.
Yeah.
Just we were here for something physical, and then it does we end up being together.
And it's okay if it evolves that way, right? But to your point, which I think is a solid point that a lot of people feel, it's like, I want to keep it in a certain box or compartment. What I find is that people trying to keep it in a certain box or compartment because they become possessive. And that feels so out of control to really want somebody, and to know that they don't belong to you. And I feel like that is the barrier where people are trying to guard themselves from wanting to possess somebody. And it's like that's something you can work on and not necessarily have to be with them. Like processing those feelings of like, now I don't want nobody else to have you.
That's good. Good sex is spiritual. So we having sex
Hmm.
like gospel music. What you mean?
No. unless that's your jam. Like when I think about spiritual, I think about like when we were having the book talk thing, and I was like, I want an experience to be transcendent. I want it to be divine, where I feel like I realize the world is bigger than me and we just levitate together. You were like, you want to see God. I was like, and do. So it might not be gospel music playing in the background, but I do want to be reminded of how like amazingly creative we are and all of this stuff that's outside of the crazy world we live in. Just, the stuff falls away so that you can just be together and kind of be in this like spiritual haven together. And it doesn't have to be that way. These are all ingredients that you can choose from that can season your sexual situation.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, that's one that's important.
Sensual. Good sex is sensual.
Meaning all them senses can be
All
involved.
can be involved.
So, do you want it to smell good, taste good, feel good, look good, and be good? Like all of those. And I feel like sometimes we fall off from making it a sensual experience. We focus on just how it feels, um, and not how it smells or tastes or all of those other things.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Good sex is communicative.
You started kind of with this one, just being able to talk to your sex partner about the things you want and don't want. If there are issues that come up, like how do you have conversation where you are both receptive and expressive, where you are taking in the information and getting that feedback and using it and not getting snotty about it, bratty about it, and also offering feedback, expressing something to someone, even if you feel a little scared.
Yeah, because sex is a something that is learned, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can be taught. Um,
Yes.
for the in most cases. Now sometimes it's just not a fit, and that's fine. But in most cases, it's a thing that can be taught and can learn. But
Mm-hmm.
how can someone learn if you don't aren't willing to teach? In order to teach, you gotta talk.
And people really be trying to learn through porn and other entertainment sources, like you were talking about Zane. Zane is for entertainment, right? But we was reading that like,
Like, dang,
mm, so I'm not getting
yeah.
it.
Sure was. Good sex is wet.
Yeah. I
Now,
love lubrication.
let's talk about that. So right quick. So, do you feel that lube should be used during sex all the time?
Most of the time, yes.
Okay. And explain why that is. If you
I
don't.
feel like it can make a good thing better.
Okay, good.
And for some people, who feel like a little bit of shame about their own natural lubrication capacity, using lube means you don't have to be as concerned about that. So you aren't like worried about your body and how your body is functioning. But I do say that don't use it in place of arousal. Like allow yourself to get aroused and then use it as a compliment. Um, I think for things like anal, for whether it's woman and man or man and man or whatever constellation you have, people understand that lube is going to be used.
Hmm.
But when it comes to vaginal penetration, people are like, oh, I'm just supposed to be wet. I'm just supposed to pop out. I'm just supposed to be aquafina. And it's like, okay, maybe you are today, and maybe you aren't tomorrow. Or maybe you never were, and that's okay too. I like the variations on lube.
So
What do you think?
I talk about this in my book that I'm writing.
Hmm.
Like every time I say something about people should use lube, it becomes like the WAP Olympics, right? Everybody
Yes.
trying to like one up the other bitch. Like
Wet, wet or wettest.
I got a lot, girl. My wife is it's like that everybody is trying to one up each other. And I'm like,
Hmm.
what are we doing? All right. It is nothing wrong with using lube if you have a WAP. If you don't have a WAP, in between, whatever, just, it's okay to use lube. And like, I think we need to get away from the idea that lube is only used if there's some type of issue.
I had this edited out of the book. So I talk about something similar in that chapter where this race to wet, wetter, wettest comes from hip hop, right? Where it's like, I got Aquafina and I got Juicy Fruit and I got, and it's like trying to be better than the other person. But I think there's also something to be said about like, why do we gotta be better than other people? Why do we feel like we gotta one up each other in that arena of all arenas?
Like women, we it's a lot of competition with women on various things.
Yeah.
And like, and we just like we have to like, oh, I'm better than you. I have to one up you. And I see it on my page every time I post about lube. It's the comments. I don't gotta use lube. Well, I'm like, well, congratulations, good for you. Like, it's crazy. All right, good sex is safe.
Hmm. And I know you do a lot of this work on talking about PrEP, talking about contraceptive use, talking about condom use, internal and external, and also talking about psychological and physical safety when it comes to intimate partner violence or sexual assault. So, all of those fronts, safe is really important for people.
Good sex is relaxing.
Because if you've ever had a post nut sleep,
Yes, it's the best
a
feeling.
lot of us use solo sex just to get the best sleep.
I
You know, like that's just a part of our sleep hygiene routine. And I think more of us should consider that.
did last night. I was up till 1 o'clock. I was like, you know what? Let me just do this, and I had the best sleep this past.
Right? Right?
Like the best sleep ever. Like best sleep. Good sex is comfortable.
Yeah, I'm talking in this way. I'm talking about ease with a partner where you don't got to put on for each other,
Hmm.
where you just kind of feel like you can flow with each other and allow things to not be so complicated. So the sex doesn't have to be like all of these different things, and we don't have to talk about like our body being able to flex and your head is behind your leg is behind your head. And it's like sometimes you just want that old thing. Sometimes you just want the weighted blanket, the wrap, and you're
Yeah.
good, you know.
And lastly, this is true for me. Good sex is liberating.
And
I think
that's why I ended with that one.
yeah,
Yes.
I think once you realize that um you couple things. Once you kind of like find your community of people, I tell people all the time, there's no such thing as like white sex, black sex, it's just sex. Because black people sometimes be like, well, that's white sex, right? Whatever sex you like is your sex. Whatever
That's
is,
right.
and I think sometimes once you realize that, oh, there are people who look like me or who do these things or into this thing, it's very liberating. Like
Yes.
there are women who like whatever. There are men who like whatever. Like it's not a thing that I have to like be shameful about. It's not a thing I have to hide. Um,
Mm.
it's just very liberating. Like I think, and also I'll say for me, like once I became sex with Ashley, and once I became okay with exploring sex, talking about sex, it also liberated me in other areas of my life.
That's right. I remember reading one thing that you wrote. You were talking about your experience with a sex worker and how it was just liberating to be able to get exactly what you wanted and what you paid for. And I feel like that helps so many people because there's such shame still about paying somebody for a very talented, like a high quality service. And so I think even when you're doing your education and sex outreach, you're promoting other people's liberation. I think that's the cornerstone of our work, right? That I'm not here to just talk to you about sex. I'm here to talk to you about how you get free. And
Yeah,
sex is one of those playgrounds where you really can do some good work.
yeah. Like I support sex workers. I think
Hmm.
more people, particularly men in particular, should just hire sex work because y'all
Thank
like
you.
I'm on a date now trying to pretend that you want a relationship.
Right.
Just go get you a sex work because you just want some pussy. That's why we here.
Hmm.
So just go get some pussy. Like go pay for it, and
And
then
somebody who is highly skilled, so you
yeah,
can get all the things that
you
you
have
want to get.
time. They're gonna do everything you want to do it well. I'm hoping if you're paying for it, and just go about your day. Like I wish I could find like a maintenance person. Maybe every 2 weeks. Johnny over here at 4 o'clock. I don't know. Like I would if I could find somebody that I liked or figure out how to do it. I would pay for it,
Yep. Because
and
sometimes that is easy.
it's easier. It's a lot easier. Cause now, when I pay for it, he come, he go. Now when old buddy come over, I gotta like, talk to him about your day, tender care, you know. Yeah, gotta do all those things. Actually have you ate? Do you want to stay over? Like it's all these things that go into it that I may or may not want to be in the mood to do. But if I pay for it, you come and you go home and we all and I ain't gotta try to pretend like this is something that's not.
And it's not an expectation.
No, it's not. So Candice, where can we find good sex?
Yeah, you can find it on barnesandnoble.com, bookshop, local bookstores if you're in Atlanta, Karis Bookstore. Ask your library to order it so you can get it for free. If you have Spotify Premium, go on and just download that thing and you can hear me read it. If you got Audible, go ahead and use one of them credits and you can hear me read it. It's on Amazon for Kindle and regular. So anywhere you want to get a book, please ask them to get it.
And where can people find you?
You can find me at drcandicenicole.com and at Dr. Candice Nicole on IG, Threads, and Facebook on occasion.
You said who?
Facebook on occasion.
Oh, Facebook. Okay. Well, thank you for joining me tonight, Candice. I have
Thank you
loved
for having me.